Hi, I'm your host Dave Kemp, and this is Future Ear Radio. Each episode, we're breaking down one new thing, one cool new finding that's happening in the world of hearables, the world of voice technology. How are these worlds starting to intersect? How are these worlds starting to collide? What cool things are going to come from this intersection of technology? Without further ado, let's get on with the show. All right, so we're joined here today by two of my favorite reoccurring guests. We got Andy Bellavia and Kat Penno. So you two, you've been on before. Why don't you go around quickly and talk about who you are and what you do? We'll start ladies first.
Thanks, Dave, and hello, Andrew. Oh, Andy, a bit formal there. So I am an audiologist, and I'm the founder of Hearing Collective. My ultimate goal with Hearing Collective is to provide accessible digital solutions and resources to the general public and I suppose the greater good overall. I have a strong passion for proactive hearing healthcare and a really big interest in hearing technology overall. So hearables, headphones, straight through to hearing aids, implantable devices. And I'm sure there's more to come in the future. So that's me in a very quick nutshell.
As Dave said, I'm Andy Bellavia, Director of Market Development for Knowles. We make the tiny microphones and speakers that go into mobile phones, hearing aids, hearable devices, music earphones, and the like. And I'm responsible for all the in-ear business, which is not a regulated hearing aid. So hearables are my ball game, so are music earphones and musician IEMs, but not hearing aids. But I'm also a hearing aid user for a couple of years. And I've always been interested in the music space, the audio space, and more recently, the hearable and voice space. So for me, everything converges together, both professionally and personally. Pleasure to be on again, Dave. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And that's great. It's awesome to have you two here. You know, as I was saying before we even started recording, the purpose for today's conversation is going to be just kind of a high level overview of all this movement that's been taking place. Where we sit, the three of us sort of, in some way or shape tied to the hearing health space and the hearable space, the voice space, all these different areas. What's great is that we've formed, I think a great relationship between the three of us. And so I'm viewing this as being a reoccurring kind of conversation that we'll have on the podcast is, every few months we'll get together and rather than talk about one particular topic, we'll talk through just sort of like what's going on because there is a lot going on. There's a lot of movement that's happening and we're going to get into that today. But to kick things off, we did want to go through, we haven't really had an episode where we've kind of tackled a lot of the different hearable options that are out there that exist in the market today. What we wanted to do is rather than go into, really detailed product specs or anything like that, we wanted to just highlight some different products and talk through things about those products that we find to be interesting, maybe forward-thinking, progressive in terms of how it's expanding people's perception of this type of product offering. Even in the few years that I think we've all been kind of tracking this space, it's dramatic how much change has happened in terms of not only the product's hardware, but what these products can do and what they can lead into. So that's going to be the gist of today's conversation. I'll kick things off, Kat, with you. Why don't you speak to any number of hearables that have been on your mind lately? I know you've had a chance to try a lot of these out. If you could just maybe go through a handful or a few and just speak to some different things and allow for us to just kind of like segue into a broader conversation from there.
Sure, no problems at all. Gosh, there's so much. I'm just going to rattle a few off and then I'll talk about some that I've really had interesting and great experiences with. So the Neurophones, the Audira headphones, Even headphones, Uhira, their IQ Buds Max, which is their latest model, Be Hears, AirPods, the AirPod Pros, and Jabra Elite 85Ts. I know there are Bose earphones on the market. I haven't been able to get my hands on those. I don't know if they're just sort of product in America. You guys might be able to tell us a bit more about that. But we know they're working in this space. obviously they have headphones, but I'm not aware of any of their products augmenting hearing. So you can correct me if I'm wrong there. I guess for me, the biggest thing when it comes to hearables, I view it as, first of all, how am I going to feel using this product? That's one, and that's something I think about when I talk about hearing technology to my clients. Are they going to have a good user experience? So that's a really forethought for me, because if you have a good user experience, you're more likely to return to the product and use it again and again. And second of all, being a healthcare professional, I like to know that it's in some way going to highlight how this may help with your hearing, or protect it, or augment it to improve your quality of life and your listening ability out and about in, say, noisy situations like a cat or watching TV in an open plan living area at home. For me, I've had great experiences with the Audio AR and the Even headphones. I'm a big fan of over the ear when it comes to certain activities. And just to preface, I suppose what I'm going to say further is that I view hearing technology in this space as almost everybody will have more than one hearing product with them at the end of the day. So when we're doing, say, our shows like we are now, my preference is to use over-the-ear headphones with active noise cancellations to block out any external noises. When I've gone for walks, I've used the AirPod Pros, and then you hear IQ Buds. So my point is that we'll all have a whole bunch of hearing technology to choose from as the audio space and arena gets larger and larger. So I digress. Audio headphones, Even headphones, get my tick of approvals for different reasons. The new Hero IQ Buds were excellent, and I had a fantastic experience with the AirPod Pros. And those two styles are more in the ear, and I use them for different cases. For example, working out and going for walks, I prefer that style of headphone as well. So again, different reasons why I like them, and it's endless, but big ticks for me with all those products is situational use, when and where do I want to use them and why. The fact that they all have some form of ability to screen your hearing and then to log that and then look back over that over time. I mean, pros and cons to each of those brands as well. The Evens, I found the bass excellent. They're pushing more into the music market, and that's a lot of their marketing and their selling point. And I think that they do an excellent job of reimagining how you have a hearing test experience. I like the idea that they use bits of songs. Can you hear this part of a song and that part of a song? And I think that's just a lot more fun than doing a standard pure tone audiogram or even a warble tone audiogram. So that's a definite highlight. Audio, I found their user experience really smooth. I've sort of followed them from the beginning, being an Australian gal, and they're an Australian company. And I think their experience with their app has gotten better and better every time. And similar with New Hera, their user experience with the app has gotten better every time. Their hearing screening is very accurate to a clinical air conduction test, so I'm a big fan of that one. And the AirPod Pro is just, I suppose it's just something so smooth with the way Apple operates, and they really understand their target market and the user experience from beginning to unpacking their products to using them and recharging them. I think I've had a really great time with the AirPod Pros recently. I know, and we'll probably touch on this a little bit more. Pros and cons, the AirPod Pros is probably a bit more at the basic end or the entry level end of the hearable experience, in my opinion. And then we would work up through to the better brands that are working quite nicely to the hearing loss and improving that experience to the customer. So it's a bit of a full-on intro. Andy, Dave, any thoughts on the things I've just rattled off?
It's interesting because you highlight a lot of different products, and each one takes a little bit of a different approach. I think you can break it up into two different experiences. There are some who are trying to augment your music listening experience and personalizing your hearing there. And there are others who are then trying to give you improved ambient hearing experience. That is, kind of the over-the-counter hearing aid type of experience. And, a couple who are approaching both, but with different people coming at it from different directions, they're building up an awareness of hearing health, for one use case or another. I mean, there are very few devices actually that cover all the ground. I mean, I would say even my hearing aids, the Bluetooth streaming is fantastic. For example, they are bar none the best for video meetings like this one, because I'm getting fully audiological corrected, playback into my ears. So nothing is more understandable than these. But the music listening experience isn't the best. If I take one of the headphones you named, the corrected music listening experience is fantastic. But they don't use their microphones, and I can't go to a restaurant and throw them into restaurant mode. So there are some doing one or the other. Even Nuheara is correcting your ambient listening experience, but not correcting the music experience. So a lot of different converging on the hearing application from a lot of different directions. As you say, Kat, very application and use case specific at this moment. But I love the overall direction that there's a lot of awareness at consumer level being built for customized hearing and hearing assistance in difficult situations, which can only be to the good in the long term.
Yeah, I think I really like these points that you guys are making. And Kat, thanks for a good overview of, a lot of a lot of these, I think, really reputable companies that are have either been in this space for a while, like in Nuheara, or are just sort of emerging in this space. And I think what's so interesting is when you have this, when you have these different approaches, like people coming into this space and having totally new ideas about how we've maybe done things that have historically been kind of mundane. Like the hearing test is a really good example. Another company would be like a Sonic Cloud, where they have a really, really, fun experience. It's a creative app kind of thing. And then you have, what Nuheara, their test is great. And it's done with, the NAL lab in Australia too. So like you said, it's very high quality. And then you have, the Even headphones, and they have they're actually playing snippets of music. And, from an audiologist perspective, from a professional's perspective, sure, it might not be a gold star standard, but what excites me about this whole space isn't necessarily that, every single person is getting, this optimal experience. It's that people are getting something. It's that people are they're finally being introduced into this space through a variety of these different companies. And so whether it's hearing health or some of these different applications that I think these devices are conducive to, what's exciting is that we're seeing sort of this, I think, this is the hearing aid hearables convergence in a way where you take a lot of the things that make a consumer electronics product appealing, whether it be the price point, it be the form factor, it be the way that the music sounds, and you start to apply some of these different more medically focused applications on top of there. And I think in the consumer's eye, it's the perception's different. It's not like you led with that, right? Like they're not buying these products because they want to take a hearing test and they want these, that they want to have this really great sounding experience with their music, or they want to have the ambient sound in their life be augmented in a way that's relative to their hearing loss. Some people might be buying them for those reasons, but a lot of people are, I think, being introduced to these types of features and being made aware that this exists. And the biggest of them all, I think, is AirPods Pro. We can talk about why AirPods Pro are far from perfect, from an audiological standpoint, like a hearing correction standpoint, but I'm not sure if that's really even the point. I mean, if you think about the millions of people that own that type of product, that are suddenly, they're being introduced not only to active noise canceling, maybe for the first time, or the transparency mode, which you can layer on, you can turn on some of these different settings so that you have, this hearing correction element layered on top of it. That might be pretty mind-blowing for somebody that had never considered hearing aids before, that is kind of now suddenly become a potential candidate for something like that down the line. So I think we can't discredit this whole aspect of introducing a whole lot more people to the benefits of this, even if those aren't optimal benefits. I think giving them sort of an appetizer, if you will, to the entree will make them, I think, more inclined, to potentially pursue, a more sophisticated device down the line. And hopefully, I think this is where the opportunity really comes from with the professionals is being that, start to finish liaison between these different devices, and recognizing that when you're seeing somebody for the first time, they're probably, unless they have a loss that warrants it, they're probably not a hearing aid candidate, but maybe over time they will be. But I think more importantly, you can establish that relationship, and you can guide them through their options more or less.
Yeah, really excellent points from both you guys. And two things I really want to highlight with Dave there that I 100% agree with. I think what I get really excited about with the hearable market is that these consumer electronic brands are coming into the hearing healthcare space at one aspect, like Andy said, and perhaps with a different focus for music and listening experiences. But they're really elevating the user experience when it comes to hearing health and putting it, I'd like to think, at the forefront of people's minds, in a sense that, oh, yeah, okay, this is confirmed I've got a hearing loss. Maybe A, I'll do something about it, or B, I won't, but at least it's sort of come to the forefront of their eyes to see some sort of result via an app in front of them. Doesn't mean they're going to do anything about it, which leads me to my second point whilst I was listening to you talk then, Dave. I think I'm an optimist, so I really hope that there is some sort of opportunity here for hearing healthcare professionals to capitalize upon and leverage the hearables that are coming into this space, so that we still retain that professional service standard where people do look to us as the experts, so that as you said, we could guide them to improve their quality of life. I've been trying to reimagine how we can deliver hearing healthcare services for many years now, and I still think about it often, and iterations of my site have changed over time, because I think as I get feedback from people straight away, it's great to hear what's working and what isn't working. And that's the whole point of Hearing Collective. It's not just this is it. It changes over time.
And that's what I love about you too, is that, we have your perspective here on the podcast of somebody that you really are, I think, like a poster child of pushing the boundaries on this concept of, it's not necessarily a one size fits all solution. It's not just about hearing aids. Hearing aids are just one tool. So I think it's fascinating. I just want to reiterate that to the audience here, is that I think that's what makes your perspective, on top of being a really intelligent person, it is awesome to hear about somebody that is pushing the limits on this whole idea. And you've been doing it for, I think, like 3 or 4 years. So to hear your thoughts about this is really, I think, valuable for me, and I hope for the audience as well.
Yeah, I think it's tricky market, as you guys know, because I do want to use hearing aids as a medical grade device and an option for our clients or consumers at the end of the day. But what is the bigger picture here with hearing technology, and how can we deliver something that's very holistic to our clients? And I'm hoping that the hearables and this sort of entry level is not the right word, but a starting point to some people's hearing healthcare journey is perhaps the hearables, and then they might realize that they might need to progress to something else at the end of the day. I mean, Andy, perhaps you can talk to, I suppose, your experience using both hearing aids and hearables. And I think you went straight from hearing aids, correct me if I'm wrong here, to then trying hearables. And then I think you are probably, what I imagine is, I've got all this hearing technology and this is how I'll use them.
Yeah, it's interesting having taken it almost backwards. I mean, I did have the original New Hearers before I had the hearing aids, but ultimately, the hearables, good hearables for hearing enhancement came along right about the time I had gone past their ability to work for me, and so really I jumped into the hearing aids first. But I think that experience kind of helps color my own thinking about it. And that is that the attitude you're taking, Kat, is exactly the one that'll succeed in the future. Because if you look at what's happening in hearable space right now, correction and enhancement of mild to moderate hearing loss is going to become a feature. Okay, it's going to be a feature in anything you buy from Bose. It's going to be a feature in anything you buy from Jabra. It's going to be a feature in anything you buy from Apple. And so nobody is going to go into an audiologist seeking care for mild hearing loss per se. Okay. And I'll go a step further to say ultimately there's a tsunami coming in hearing care. And that is what happens when 5 or 10 years from now, a consumer hearable device has a processor 10 times as powerful and delivering 18 hours of battery life. Okay. Now, even audiological grade hearing correction is divorced from the specific hardware, right? Today, the only way I can get audiological grade correction in a small, comfortable device that'll go 18 hours on a single charge is using a hearing aid with a dedicated processor designed for that experience. When consumer programmable DSPs get to that level of power and battery life, now all of a sudden, audiological correction is a software feature. It's still one that's going to need FDA approval in the US and the other authorities, so it'll be a combination of this hearing correction algorithm and this hardware gets, regulatory approval, but different hardware people can form partnerships with, audiological software people and load it into their device. You're not going to need necessarily a dedicated, customized piece of hardware to make it work. Okay. Now, if it actually comes that way, the present hearing health provider, the hearing aid companies, they've got a leg up on hearing correction software capability because they've been doing the best grade software with 32 channels of adjustment and compression and all the other things that they do. So the game is still there. It's the hardware part that changes. The other part that doesn't change is the need for an audiologist. Okay, because even 10 years from now, if I can get a consumer product that'll run audiological grade software for what will probably be truly severe hearing loss, and for me another 10 years from now, I still need professional assistance to make that work in the best possible way. We're still going to have a conversation about situations in which I have difficulty. I'm still going to get real air measurements and all that, right? So the audiologist is in a good place, but the audiologist becomes a person whose expertise is valuable, not as a hardware salesperson, but as an expertise at all levels of hearing loss and, hearing loss that manifests itself in different situations. So I think, the direction that CAT is taking is exactly the right one, considering where this is moving. Off the shelf or mild to moderate, and eventually more of a subscription model, audiological algorithm, provision for a more severe hearing loss.
Oh, so well said, Andy, and definitely agree with all your points you said there. And yeah, so I suppose the next question from here is, hardware aside, where do we pivot to or shift from if we have a model that relies a lot or majority of our revenue in the hardware side or in the product? I suppose that's where the software comes in and the diversification of models.
Well, I think, I think we all agree that that's probably inevitable, that, there's going to be a reckoning more or less with the revenue model of the provider, at least in terms of their hearing aid sales. Just as Andy laid out, it's just hard to imagine the price points remaining, kind of like in perpetuity, that they're going to be where they are now. I think that there are just so many different external factors working in tandem that are going to exert downward pressure on the prices, and therefore it's going to exert pressure on the margins. But I think that I actually think it's a blessing in disguise, because I think what it's going to do is it's going to really reemphasize where the real value lies, which is the expertise. And Kat, you've actually had some fascinating thoughts about this before on coaching, right? It's like this idea of a parallel between being a coach. And I can't get that idea out of my head, to be quite honest, because I think it's brilliant. And I think that, again, it all comes back in my mind to this idea where it's going to be about establishing relationships. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of creating a big net to capture those potential relationships and establishing those relationships. And then I think, like to Andy's point, a lot of these products, they're going to just keep getting better and better at serving that, like the mild end of the spectrum. It's just going to kind of like gradually move more and more toward the middle in terms of what the device itself, through the algorithms and stuff like that, are going to be able to calibrate themselves. I mean, again, it goes off of what we've been talking about with like Nuheara IQ buds. Providers should be well aware of how this device works in terms of the unboxing process. When you go in there and you basically are just self-fitting yourself. I think that there's the writings on the wall that a lot of these devices are going to be able to do a portion of what providers do today. But the fact remains that if you're using a device like that, you have a loss. And to think that something as complicated as a hearing loss can just be like dealt with on your own, I think there's also a sense of naivety there, because I don't think that's really realistic, especially as it gradually progresses and it gets worse. So you're going to have, while you'll have I think, increasing amount of people that are kind of like do it yourself on the more mild to moderate end, what you're also creating is a larger funnel of people that ultimately are going to lead into, I want an expert, right? Like I want somebody that's going
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
No, I mean, this is that second point I made earlier. I'm so hopeful that that's where the funnel is going to go. If that was built in as a prompt or something like that in the app. Oh, by the way, you've fallen into the moderate severe category, perhaps consider seeing a specialist. Otherwise, I just don't think that sense of nativity is certainly there, and at any age, and even those clients who come into the clinic and, oh, no, I definitely don't have a hearing loss. My wife mumbles, or vice versa. I just think it's their perception of the value that they place on hearing and hearing loss. So I totally envision what you're saying, Dave. That's exactly how I envision it as well. Like, let's have this funnel effect from hearables, but there's no real prompt at the end of these apps to say, by the way, consider seeing a hearing healthcare professional. I'm not sure how it's structured in the USA, but
that's a very
the brands
fair point.
like Audiera and Audiera definitely have been doing this. They position themselves where they sell their hearing product through clinics. And I just saw on LinkedIn the other day that Dr. James Fielding, who's their CEO, he's got a new partnership, and the Audiera team have a new partnership with Amplifon. And so they sell their product directly through audiologists and hearing healthcare clinics, which I think is really smart, because if you were going to place a product like that on a shelf at a big consumer electronics store, you may get lost amongst the other bigger brands out there, like the Samsungs and the Bose of the headphone world.
Great point.
But I think the other thing I wanted to say, listening to you speak there, is that how do we create these applications with these products to prompt that behavior change, where people can come into play? And we were all sort of tiptoeing around it, or perhaps going to discuss it, but these other external brands coming in and reimagining how they can solve the problem of hearing loss, or people managing their hearing loss sooner. So I guess I wanted to bring up Whisper coming into our space. That's been pretty big news this week in our opinions in the hearing healthcare world. They're an interesting company, and as you highlighted in your tweets, Dave, some pretty big hitters who've co-founded that brand and looking to solve the problem in this space. And I really like that. I really like that they've come in with a fresh new it's not even really a fresh new idea, because I've spoken about the SaaS model in our space before, and that's where I think of me being, say, a health coach, a hearing health coach, is some sort of app there where I can look at people's data and stats and then tap into their hearing product and say, hey, Dave, hey, Andy, today I noticed you're wearing your hearing aid for 4 hours. Great job. These are other ways you can improve it. So I guess that's me as a hearing healthcare professional. How do I see myself in the long term? some sort of involvement with the machine learning, the data that I'll be getting, and then being able to output the coaching or the counseling that is needed for the end user to have a really good experience with the product.
Yeah, you said a lot there, and my opening thought as you were speaking was, today you have, for example, the Apple Watch cluing you in if you're having problems with your CV system, right? Because it's monitoring, your heart rate, and it's looking for atrial defibrillation and this sort of thing, right? And there have been testimonials by people who say that they averted a medical disaster by the warning they got from their Apple Watch. So who will break the ice and kind of take that step in hearing care? I mean, I could imagine, I've just used Apple as an example since they've already done it on the watch and now they're approaching hearing care through the AirPods Pro. Do they at some point say to you, you've exceeded my capability to correct your hearing? You might want to consult a professional. Then you really kind of bridge that gap between the hearable space and the hearing aid space. And I think that's an important one because that will do more to relieve the stigma than anything else. I mean, in the meantime, I think the messaging, because of the stigma presence, and there is that gap that hasn't been bridged between hearables and hearing aids. In other words, how do you get people to make the leap from using a new hearer device to going to a hearing aid when they really need it, right? Since that gap is not there, I think the message is as much about lifestyle as anything else, right? You don't need hearing correction because you're old. You need, or you want hearing correction for lifestyle improvement purposes, okay? When you go into a noisy restaurant and you struggle to hear, okay, I can take care of that for you, all right? When you're on Zoom meetings all day long, or do you find yourself fatigued at the end of the day? Maybe it's because you're spending a lot of brain power just trying to hear what people are saying, right? Lifestyle, I think, is everything, and addressing people's lifestyle and helping them realize that by addressing their hearing loss, they're going to enjoy real tangible lifestyle benefits is another way to bridge that gap. I think all these things are coming, especially through the efforts of people like Kat, who are thinking more holistically about hearing care. And we're not even talking about hearing protection here. We're already talking about after you've already gone down the road. But hearing protection is another place where that expertise
Absolutely.
comes to the fore.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, going off of a few of these points here, I definitely agree with what Kat said there. I think that what could be an issue is that you have the self-serve market, if you will, that never really is introduced to the value of a professional. And I think that the professional, kind of going off of your point, Andy, in many ways, and again, I think a lot of this is applicable across the board, but I think specifically talking about this like more mild to moderate market, because as you progress into higher levels of severity, it becomes a problem to the point of where you need to go seek somebody out. And that's, I think, where really like this industry has traditionally been sitting at. It's like moderate and above, some people below, but primarily you're serving people with perceived $3,000 to $5,000 to $7,000 problem, whatever it might be. But I do think that it comes down to this idea of like this lifestyle piece. It's a really, really well said, phrase or in whole concept that you've outlined, Andy, because I do think that that's where the professionals, if they want to get into this end of the market, I think it is going to be something more like that, where you are, through a combination of these remote services, being able to just quickly, if I'm available, if it's like an app more or less and I'm online and you can just quickly zoom into me, maybe my day or the way that my practice is designed is I have somebody that's like manning that, just as you would, a customer service rep at the front office. you think about like, the way that the world's evolving, it's just becoming more virtual. So you have this person that is a dedicated person to answer these video chats where they have an issue. So you pull up their information, you can see, okay, so here's what's going on. Let's get you in. We're going to have you, we're going to have you do a quick consultation with Kat. Kat's available tomorrow at 3, or maybe Kat's available right now. And then like Kat's going to coach you through like, here's what's going on. And here's how we're going to work through that particular situation, the noisy restaurant, the office setting that you can't really hear quite well at. But again, it's like, it's that combined with, I think, this idea of being able to see a lot of the data that's coming through and having just different, arrows in your quiver of like more things that you can do to be providing value from a consultative and expertise standpoint. And that's what's exciting to me, is I think that world is really, I think, starting to open up into, whether it be around, helping people to just be aware that these kinds of capabilities exist, and then coaching them through, different the different types of utility that you can, I think, derive from some of this different information in creative ways that ultimately it equates to perception from the patient that this person's valuable to me because they're guiding me through all of this kind of thing.
Yes, so well said. And it's sort of a flow-on effect from the discussion you had with Kim and Carl. I thought there were numerous great points from that discussion, that podcast you had with both those industry experts. And at the heart of it, really holistic, client-centered care beyond the clinical setting. I think I really like that, the lifestyle factor really being played into there. Andy, that's a really cool way to think of it.
So I think that, one of the things about this space too that's really intriguing to me is that you have these new product offerings, and with AirPods in particular, the question isn't anymore, will there be like a proliferation of these types of devices? Like, I feel like that we've already answered the question. It's very obvious that we're trending toward a future where and I love what you said earlier too, Kat. I agree with you about this idea that you probably will have multiple form factors. I go back to the conversation I had with Preeti McGill of Periphery, this idea that, it could totally evolve to where you have literally earrings that you wear that are fashionable, that might be like, they have 3 use cases, right? Like I can communicate with my voice assistant to do a couple different things in my phone. I can hear messages coming in, whatever that might be. But again, it kind of speaks to this point where I think it's totally within the realm of possibility, especially as these products, like the even headphones are really cheap. And so you can just imagine that people have a pair of over-the-ear headphones, they have a pair of in-the-ear headphones, they have maybe all kinds of different things that they're wearing. But point being is that it certainly feels like we're heading, full steam into a future where we're all outfitted with our own types of intelligent audio devices that we're wearing in and around our ears. And what's really exciting, when we decided to do this podcast, initially we were going to just kind of talk about like hearables and the hardware. But what's exciting is that, in the span of a few days, there's been a number of different things that have happened, whether it be new formats of content, right? So you now have Spotify with Anchor. They are now enabling music podcasts, more or less. And I think that kind of begs the question, like, what even is a podcast anymore if you have the ability to integrate music into a podcast? And again, why is this relevant to the conversation? Well, the question always I think that we need to ask ourselves is, in a future where we're all wearing things in our ears, what are we going to do? Like, what are going to be the things that we do with that access point into the audio internet? So you have that whole piece that I think is really interesting. Another really interesting thing is what came about yesterday that we all were, chatting about before this conversation began, which is what Foursquare just introduced. So it's this idea where, through geolocation, you will be able to, it's a platform that you'll be able to, as a business any retail operation, you'll be able to create a basically like an audio, I'm calling them audio drops. So you have an audio drop, in a mile radius, or if I'm in a really heavily, high foot traffic area, it might be, even in a couple hundred feet from where that GPS location point is. But what's interesting about this is you can basically drop a little piece of audio that can be accessed when you walk into proximity from there. And so that opens up so many different doors. Again, it's this idea that, okay, I'm walking around, I have my AirPods in, or I have my IQ buds in, I got my hearing aids in, whatever, and I have this thing turned on. Again, it's like you can start to see why people will want to wear these things for 7 hours a day or more, right? And I know that can seem a little bit dystopian at times, but you look at some of these form factors. AirPods Pro they're really, really small, or like what Andy's wearing. You don't even know that he has those on. So it just, my mind has been going a million different directions these past few days, because it feels like we've been trending in this direction of like the hardware is getting a lot better, and we've already talked through that. But what's really exciting to me is there's more and more things you can do now with this hardware, and it's only going to grow in time. And I think that that's something that professionals should be cognizant of. People in the voice space that are, building applications should be cognizant of. Like the hearing, like the ear is one of, I think, the most important pieces of real estate and important aspects to the internet for this next phase. In a way, I think maybe AR glasses were a little bit of a head fake. I do think they're coming in time, but I think that the real entry into augmented reality is actually going to be done through our ears, because I think that we've already sort of established the behavior of wearing things in and around our ears for extended periods of time. It's going to take time to condition people to being comfortable with wearing things around their eyes. It's just a big, big leap, whereas the ear wasn't nearly as big of a leap. So in many ways, I think as much hype as we've heard with augmented reality, I think in a lot of different ways, I think that it's actually going to be ushered in through our ears. So I'll just kick it off that way and see where you want to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, what a long way we've come. Think about the conversations we were having a couple of years ago, and what I think it comes down to is the hardware is getting better, but for the most part, until the present time, what people have been using it for is consuming audio, consumption. And so then you would pop them in your ears when you wanted to consume, and you would take them out of your ears when you were done consuming. But what we have now is a case where there are different applications that will cause you to leave them in all the time. Okay, Foursquare is one of those. I mean, think back, right, to the Voice Summit when we talked about this. What are the applications? What are the voice experiences that will cause people to leave them in and want to buy them and wear them out and about? Well, Foursquare is a great example of one of those, right? If I'm in a different city somewhere, of course, I have an advantage because they're in all the time anyway. But if I'm a person with AirPods Pro and I'm in a different city from the one I live in, I very much will want to leave them in my ears and take advantage of the Foursquare feature while I'm out and about in that city. That's potentially a direction for hearing correction as well. So you take what Apple has done. Now I have a reason to leave the AirPods Pro in when I'm in a pub or a restaurant, whereas normally I would have popped them out. Well, now I'm going to leave them in. Well, if I'm going to leave them in, I'm going to use them. And if I'm going to use them, then there becomes monetizable value in having lots of people wearing those devices. And if I circle back to the audiological component of all this, it's another area where the audiologist office can add value, because not only am I seeking a device to improve my hearing, but I need guidance on how to make them work for the rest of my lifestyle. Okay, so go back to the audiological genius bar. right? That conversation from February.
Yeah, with Mark Trung.
Yeah, exactly. I'll never forget that conversation because I did that video in Portland while it was raining, and that was the last day I had traveled.
Yeah.
I flew home the next day, and then we started going on lockdown, and that was it. And so I remember that conversation, for that reason. But you think about it, whether I've taken an over-the-counter device, whether I've taken a regulated hearing aid, there's a whole lifestyle extension component that goes to it, right? In the audiological genius bar, you find out what people do, and then you fit them with a device that's appropriate for your hearing correction, but also for the other parts of their lifestyle. Okay. And so you'll help a person. How do I stream podcasts through it? How do I use my voice assistant with it? How do I take advantage of the device in different ways outside of hearing and make it a lifestyle enhancer, both for the hearing part and for the other things that the device can do today? That's a place where the expertise of the audiological shop can really make a difference.
Absolutely. And that's why I keep thinking we've got to reimagine how we deliver our services, and also, I suppose, what we teach at university as well, to a certain extent, or what else we add into the courses that are currently being taught. But that whole space that you've just spoken about, Dave, opens a whole new can of worms for us to delve into, especially with what you've recommended with your tweets to listen and follow through. A lot of this stuff is always in the background of my head, and until I listened to some of these other podcasts and read some of these articles you've recommended, the way they speak about the audio experience and the podcast and audio content space, it's just huge. And exactly like you said, the ears is this hot property in terms of the organs that we want to utilize to enhance our experience on a daily basis. And the audio space is just exploding. Like you said, Foursquare is an example, and then Spotify and all the acquisitions they're making in their space. And yeah, I suppose the bigger picture is what does the hearables lead to, and that's hardware. It's just going to get better. And so what else can we do with the audio and the audio content in this space? And then me as a hearing healthcare professional, how can we utilize these awesome tools that are coming out to enhance the client's audio and listening experience at the end of the day? And oh man, I'm really looking forward to the next time we have this discussion, because I suppose we'll go down more the software side of things, and perhaps business models and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even really, I realized now, one of the things I was really excited to talk about was Whisper. We talked about it a little bit, but we'll save that and the business models for the next time, and definitely want to lead into more of this conversation, because I do think, what's so interesting is you think about what made the mobile era really explode in terms of like the way that it created this just giant ecosystem of new use cases and apps. And really, when you think about it, it was the camera. The camera, in many ways, was the driving force behind a lot of what the whole mobile ecosystem sort of led into, right? Whether it be with Instagram and Snapchat and now TikTok, you can just kind of see how it led to all of these different things. Having a high quality camera embedded into your device, in many ways, the parallel here, I think, is the GPS location of the hearable, because this is a really good application of it, where you now have this ability to tie content or tie these experiences that can be filled or can be filtered through, whether it be through a voice assistant or just filtered directly into your device. Andy, we've talked about it before, but it's this idea of, you can imagine not only this whole application of the restaurants and the different, all the different places that you walk by, the shops and everything. They're saying, here's our specials of the day. You could have promotions, tied to this. You just turn Marsbot on. That's what this platform's called. And you can access these different audio drops. But another example would be, in store. navigation. So we've talked about like Home Depot, where are the nails? Again, these things seem just so feasible now that we're starting to kind of see some momentum here where, again, if these companies and these developers and designers, if they're operating off of the assumption that we're wearing these devices in our ears and that you have the ability to feed a piece of audio to that person at any given moment based on their proximity, it just opens the door in a way that I think we haven't even really seen since like the phone having a high-end camera embedded inside of it did. So it really does, in my opinion, feel like we are at this really exciting onset of new applications. And to your point, Andy, I love this idea of a lifestyle enhancer, right? Like I've talked about before, how if I were a provider, I would have a list of of 10 different podcasts in different categories. I would talk to them and I would say, do you listen to podcasts? And if they say no, I would introduce them to the concept and I would say, what kinds of things do you like? Do you like sports? Do you like gardening? Do you like, boating, whatever that might be. And I would do a little bit of research on my own to find them and I would steer them to that because again, it's small things like that in aggregate, it changes the whole experience. It goes from one that is primarily around, I'm going to help you hear better to I'm going to enhance the quality of life that you have, whether that be, of course, you're going to be an expert in the primary use case of providing a better experience, with the way that you hear the world. But I think that there's so many new things that you can layer on top of that they just increase your value proposition. And ultimately, I think what that's going to do is it's going to drive referrals because people are going to be talking about this stuff. They're going to be like, oh my God, I have these new hearing aids. Not only are they a great thing or this new hearable, whatever device it is, but not only is it allowing for me to like hear you all again and be engaged in this conversation in a way I haven't been in years, but I'm able to stream a podcast quite invisibly, throughout the day. I can access this Marsbot platform that my provider introduced me to where I can like access, all of these different audio snippets. There's so many things like this where we're at the very, very early stages of it. So, I don't think you can be dismissive of this because we're only going to see more and more of it. And the reason we're going to see more and more of it is because it's predicated off of this assumption that more and more people have things in their ears. So designers and developers and, app creators have more incentive than ever to build things for your ears. And so the hearing healthcare market is sort of like this indirect beneficiary of all of this new innovation and this incentive to build things for our ears.
Yeah, of course. Kat can speak from expert point of view in the hearing space, but I have to say I agree 100%, exactly 100% with everything you said. Everything.
Absolutely. You said it so well. Again, that's just another tool we can use that's in the digital space to help our clients essentially auditory training by recommending these podcasts that they will have their interests in. I really like that. Just the lifestyle experience. That's a really great term that I'm going to totally try to weave into my practice somehow, because I think when we start to pivot down enhancing everybody's lifestyles, they're going to change their behavior over time, even if it's just small changes. I might just spend the next 20 minutes listening to this podcast with my hearing aids or hearables or whatever hearing technology they have. And then over time, it'll just get bigger. The hope is that it will get bigger and bigger with the encouraging or the counseling from the healthcare professional on the side. That's just so many things. Again, you've said, Dave, that I think we've been speaking for over an hour now that we could rattle on about in the hearing space. But I really look forward to the next time we talk and to look at the software and the business models.
Yeah. So, I mean, for the listeners out there, like I said, this is going to be a recurring thing. We'll probably do these every few months, just a quick get together, have a conversation that we would probably have, privately, but we'll just make it public. So lots of really interesting things to think about. I'm just grow more and more excited about this space every single day, both as from a consumer's perspective, from a patient's perspective, and from a provider's perspective. I think the more momentum, the more movement that is occurring within this space, the better. And I think it just lends itself to more ways that we can think about how do we leverage these things in some capacity to where it makes sense for the business models, for the practices, whatever it might be. Fact of the matter is there's a lot of change happening right now. We want to keep you abreast with as much of this that's happening in any way that we can, because we can't even stay on top of it all. There's just so much happening. So lots to think about, lots to, I already am like thinking through some of the different points that you two made. It was just brilliant conversation. So thank you two very much for joining me this week. And we will definitely chat again in a few months, but thanks for everybody who tuned in here to the end, and we will chat with you next time. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Future Ear Radio. For more content like this, just head over to futureear.co, where you can read all the articles that I've been writing these past few years on the worlds of voice technology and hearables and how the two are beginning to intersect. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll chat with you next time.